After staying past midnight for a critical deadline, my teammate laughed. She's the type who thinks loyalty will save her. Poor thing doesn't realize she's disposable. I didn't flinch. I quietly started interviewing, and when I accepted a new role, I also took 5 major clients with me, leaving his team collapsing under deadlines they had no idea how to meet without me. I'm not the type to speak up in meetings. I just do my job, hit every deadline, and make sure no one above me has to deal with a fire they didn't see coming. At least, that's who I used to be. My name's Dana. I'm 36. I live in Denver. Until a few months ago, I worked for a small consulting firm that liked to act like it was a big-time player. Lots of pressure, not much reward. Long nights, skipped vacations, and endless urgent projects that nobody planned for but still had to be done by morning. I'd been there for 5 years. I was the person everyone came to when things were falling apart. When a deck wasn't done, a client was pissed, or something technical broke, they called me. And I always showed up. I thought that made me valuable. The guy I reported to, Matt, thought otherwise. Matt looked good on paper. Expensive suits, loud confidence, and a smile that could sell anything, but only once. After that, he leaned on people like me to deliver. He knew how to take credit, dodge blame, and show up late with a Starbucks in hand while the rest of us were drowning. At first, I thought we were a team. I backed him up, kept our biggest clients happy, and assumed it was just a matter of time before someone noticed that he was all show and I was the one doing the work. But then he got promoted. Twice. They gave him control of the entire client strategy department. And me? I became the one he leaned on even more. Whenever something huge came in, he'd drop it on my desk with a fake grin and say, "You're the only one I trust to get this done." What he meant was, I'm going to take credit for this, so don't screw it up. That week, we were working on a huge deck for a healthcare client. The kind of client that could make or break the whole quarter. The deadline was insane, and the details were a mess. I worked 12-hour days for 2 weeks. I skipped a wedding. I stopped going to the gym. My apartment was a disaster, and I was living on energy drinks and vending machine snacks. The night before the presentation, I was still in the office at midnight, fixing charts and rewriting key points that Matt had messed up in the early draft. I heard him in the hallway, joking with another guy from sales. They didn't know I was still there. "She's the type who thinks loyalty will save her," Matt said, laughing. "Poor thing doesn't realize she's disposable." I didn't say anything. I didn't even turn around. I just stared at the screen, hit save, and kept working. But in my head, something broke. Not emotionally. Not like crying or feeling hurt. It was like I stopped pretending. Pretending this job would lead somewhere. Pretending loyalty mattered. Pretending Matt would ever see me as anything other than someone to use. So, while I finished that project, I also started making a different plan. By 7 a.m. the next morning, I delivered the deck. Client was happy. Matt walked into the meeting like he'd built the whole thing himself. He winked at me and said, "Told you we'd crush it." I just nodded. I didn't care anymore. At noon, I updated my resume. I didn't go on LinkedIn and start blasting posts. I kept it quiet. I reached out to a couple of recruiters I trusted. Told them I was looking but needed discretion. Over the next 3 weeks, I had 7 interviews. 2 were garbage. 1 felt okay. The other 4, those were serious. By the end of the month, I had 2 offers. One was from a mid-sized firm in Austin that was growing fast. They wanted someone to build out their client strategy team. More pay. Way better culture. No Matt. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was, they told me I could bring clients. No pressure. But if I had relationships, they'd be happy to support the transition. And I had relationships. 5 major ones. I'd worked with those 5 clients for years. I remembered their kids' birthdays. I flew out on weekends when things went sideways. I'd stayed on Zoom with one of them at 2 a.m. during a software migration gone wrong. So when I called them and told them I was leaving, I didn't push. I just said I was going. And every single one of them asked me where. I gave them the name. They said, "We'll be in touch." By the time I submitted my resignation, 3 of them had already sent termination letters to my old company. 2 more followed that week. Matt didn't get it at first. When I handed him my letter, he smiled and said, "Didn't think you'd actually leave." I said, "I already have." That same day, one of the partners pulled him into a room and closed the door. I could hear the shouting from my desk. They didn't just lose me. They lost 5 clients that made up over 40% of our billables. What came next was chaos. They tried to hand off my work to a junior analyst who'd only been there 2 months. She lasted 6 days before she quit. They brought in a contractor who couldn't even find the latest files. One of the clients emailed the partner directly and wrote, "Is Dana available for freelance work?" These guys clearly have no idea what's going on. I wasn't. I was in Austin, setting up my new team, hiring people I respected, and building a culture where nobody got treated like a ghost. Matt sent me an email 2 weeks after I left. "Hope you're doing well. Would love to grab coffee sometime, pick your brain." I didn't answer. The week after that, he tried again. "Things are hectic here. Would you consider coming back as a consultant? Even part-time?" Nope. I was done. And the fallout had just started. A month after I started at the new firm in Austin, I got a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize. The name was Jason Langley. He said he used to work at my old company, different department, same building. "Hey Dana. Just wanted to say I saw what you pulled off. It was legendary." I stared at the message for a long time. Legendary? I didn't think I had done anything flashy. I just left. Quietly. Took the clients who trusted me. But apparently the story had spread faster than I expected. So I asked him, "What did you hear?" He sent back 3 long paragraphs. Turns out, Matt didn't just lose clients. After I left, he panicked. Started throwing other team members under the bus to cover his ass. Blamed the failure on the junior analyst, then on poor client transitions, then even tried to spin it as me having misled the clients. HR got involved. A partner started digging. Then things got worse. Because someone, Jason wouldn't say who, had gone through old shared folders and found out that Matt had been reusing pitch decks I made 2 years ago, just changing the logos and a few lines. Whole pages copied word for word. Even the mistakes I'd fixed but never deleted. That opened the door to an internal audit. Which revealed something even worse: Matt had been inflating numbers in reports sent to the partners. Nothing huge at first, just small tweaks to make his team look stronger, but over time, those tweaks added up. Enough to make some quarter reports look like fraud. And now, legal was involved. Jason said, "They're circling." Matt's still in the building, but it's a matter of time. I sat back in my chair and just stared out the window. I didn't expect this. I didn't even want this. I just wanted out. I wanted peace. But Matt was still spinning. Still trying to control the story. And then he did something I didn't expect. He tried to drag me into it. One morning, I walked into the Austin office, coffee in hand, and my manager pulled me into a small meeting room. "Did you see this?" she asked, handing me a printed email. It was from Matt. He had sent it to one of my current clients, one of the 5 who'd come with me, and CC'd a few people from his legal team. It was full of fake concern. He claimed that I'd taken proprietary methodology with me when I left. That I was using decks that belonged to his firm. That I might be in violation of my old NDA. My client had immediately forwarded it to us and written, "Looks like someone's desperate." Still, it was serious. Even if it was trash, legal trash could still make a mess. I stayed calm. We brought in our firm's lawyers. I pulled up timestamps, Slack logs, saved versions from before Matt ever touched the decks. Some of those decks were things I'd built from scratch on my own time because he'd waited until the night before to assign them. And then something clicked. In one of the files he was accusing me of stealing, there was a note I had written at 3 a.m., buried in a slide comment, "Remind Matt again this number is wrong." I'd left it in by accident. Our lawyer laughed out loud when he saw it. We responded. Firmly. Professionally. With files and dates and metadata. Then we stopped responding altogether. Matt never replied again. But it didn't end there. 2 weeks later, I got a call from an old coworker. She sounded nervous. "Just thought you should know. HR reached out to ask about you. Matt's saying you were difficult to work with. That you were emotional. That you left because you couldn't handle pressure." I didn't say anything for a second. I wasn't surprised. That's how it goes with guys like him. When they lose, they reframe. They rewrite. They poison the air around you to protect their image. But what did surprise me was what happened next. That same coworker told me something else. "There's a rumor going around. Someone's sending your old decks to the partners. Full slide comparisons. Timestamps. Notes. I think someone on the inside is fighting back." That night, I got another message. Same burner-looking account as before. No name. Just this. "He always thought you were quiet because you were weak. But quiet people remember everything. A friend in the building." And the next day? Matt was gone. You'd think that would be it, right? Matt was gone. Fired. Probably escorted out with one of those cardboard boxes and a stiff smile. But it didn't end there. A week after I heard he'd been let go, I started getting weird emails. Not from Matt. From clients, old ones. Ones I hadn't worked with directly, but who were still tied to my former company. They were short messages, kind of vague, like, "Hey Dana, just wondering if you're consulting again? We've had some strange outreach lately. Did you actually approve this transition deck? Doesn't sound like you." At first I ignored them. Then I got one from a woman named Janet, a CFO from a tech company in Colorado Springs. I'd met her once, years ago, in a joint client meeting. She attached a deck. And when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was my deck. Old formatting. Outdated data. Recycled wording I hadn't used in over a year, but with a brand new logo slapped across the corner, some unknown startup firm in San Diego I'd never heard of. And under strategic lead? Matt's name. I called our legal team right away. They started digging. Turns out Matt had popped up almost overnight as the director of strategy for this new consulting group. From what we could gather, it was a two-man operation, just him and some smooth talker he'd teamed up with from the finance world. They had no office. Just a P.O. box, a cheap website, and a list of client contacts that looked suspiciously familiar. They were trying to fish for work using my old materials, ones Matt had clearly stolen before he left. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was dangerous. Because some of those slides contained sensitive frameworks built under non-compete clauses. And if one of those clients took the bait, it could come back on me, or worse, my new firm. So now I had to protect more than just my name. I had to clean up the mess he was still making with it. We didn't send threats right away. We watched. We tracked which companies they reached out to. We flagged every file they attached. And every time one of my old decks showed up under his name, we added it to a growing folder. My firm's partner, Brent, a sharp but calm guy who rarely raised his voice, eventually said, "Give him rope. He's hanging himself faster than we could." And he was right. 3 weeks later, we got a tip. Matt had pitched a contract to a nonprofit in Santa Fe, and he'd promised to deliver custom strategic models using a planning framework he didn't understand. It was something I'd built from scratch, not just slides, but an interactive model with logic and formulas. He tried to rebuild it without the back-end formulas. It broke. The client noticed. And guess who they called? So there I was, on a Zoom call with a furious nonprofit director asking if I knew a guy named Matt who claimed to be a former colleague and project partner. I took a breath and said, "He used to be my boss." The director nodded like that confirmed everything. Figures. We gave him a week. He missed every deadline, couldn't explain half the material, and then ghosted us after we asked him basic questions. They pulled the plug. Sent our firm the contract instead. Not because I begged. I didn't have to. I just showed them how the model was supposed to work. They signed with us the next day. But Matt wasn't done. When we finally sent a cease and desist, his partner, some guy named Eric, called our office trying to talk things down. Said they were inspired by our work, not copying. Said they were just trying to find their niche. Then he made a mistake. He said, "Honestly, Matt told me this stuff was mostly his anyway. That Dana just polished it." That call was recorded. And that's when our legal team stopped playing defense. Now it was about proving intent. About proving Matt didn't just steal files, he built a business model around material that belonged to someone else. And the proof? It was everywhere. Hidden comments. Slack exports. Old change logs. My initials on slide revisions from 2 years ago. Project schedules with timestamps. Email threads where Matt had asked me, in writing, to fix entire decks the night before deadlines. We built a case. But before we could send the next letter, Matt made his final move. He filed a lawsuit. Against me. The lawsuit came out of nowhere. It landed in my email on a Monday morning. It wasn't criminal, it was civil. But it accused me of defamation, of deliberate sabotage, and of violating a non-compete. It was long, full of dramatic legal wording and twisting of facts. He was suing me personally, not my company. For a minute, I just sat there. It felt like he'd reached up from the gutter and grabbed my ankle. But I didn't panic. Because I had something Matt never did, a solid foundation of truth, and years of documentation to back it up. Still, the suit was serious. It meant court. Lawyers. Time. Reputation. My company stood behind me without blinking. Brent said, "He thinks dragging you into this will scare you. He doesn't realize who you are." So we countered. Not just with a response, we filed a cross-complaint. A real one. For intellectual property theft, false representation, business interference, and breach of fiduciary duty while he was employed at our old firm. And then came the part he didn't see coming. One of the partners from our old company, a guy named Ramesh, reached out. He had quietly left the firm 3 months after me. At the time I didn't think much of it. But now? He had something to say. He asked if I wanted to see the internal exit reports they'd compiled about Matt, and what the audit turned up after I left. I said yes. What I got was nearly 200 pages of pure, career-ending chaos. Forged timecards. Deleted files. Fake performance numbers. And a personal email from Matt, sent on his work account, that read, "If Dana ever leaves, we just reuse her stuff and slap a new cover on it. She's too passive to do anything about it." The final nail? He had sent that to HR. By mistake. It was in the file. We added it to our case. The court date was set. It wasn't a flashy trial, just a civil hearing with a judge, but Matt showed up like it was a movie. Expensive suit, fake calm, and a folder he probably hadn't read. I was there with 2 lawyers and a binder 2 inches thick. The judge didn't even make it through the whole session before stopping the proceedings. His exact words were, "I see a pattern here. And it's not on the defendant's side." Matt tried to speak. The judge cut him off. "You initiated this with no standing. And it appears you've created damage well beyond this room." He dismissed Matt's case on the spot. Then, after reviewing our cross-complaint and supporting documents, he allowed everything to move forward. Matt looked like he'd swallowed a stone. His lawyer kept whispering, but there was nothing left to say. 3 months later, we settled, but on our terms. Matt's little startup was dismantled. They were forced to dissolve the LLC. He had to pay a financial penalty, not life-ruining, but enough to sting. He also had to sign a written admission that he misrepresented his role in the projects he claimed were his. It was sent to every client he had pitched in the last year. His partner Eric tried to pivot, but nobody trusted him anymore. Their website shut down quietly. Their email bounced back. It was over. Matt disappeared from LinkedIn. Last I heard, he was working as a freelance business advisor in some no-name town outside of Flagstaff, trying to get startup money from small investors. Probably pitching someone else's deck again. But me? I kept rising. I got promoted. I hired 2 of my favorite former coworkers who Matt had overlooked for years. One of them cried when I offered her the job, said she thought she'd never find someone who saw her value again. And me? I learned a hard truth: loyalty isn't weakness. But giving it to the wrong people is. I wasn't passive. I was patient. And when the moment came, I didn't scream. I opened the door, walked out, and left the whole place shaking behind me. They thought I was disposable. Turns out, I was the glue. And when I left, everything they'd built fell apart in their own hands.